Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and begin the afternoon session of our research papers. My name is Ben Bohr, and I'm on the research papers team here at MIT Sloan. And it's a pleasure of mine to introduce our next paper. That's called Alleviating Competitive Imbalance in MBA Schedules. And here to present the paper is Professor Mark Carwin. And the presentation will last about 20 minutes. After which we'll have questions and answers. So please hold your questions until the end, and I'll pass around the mic if you raise your hand towards the end. So with that, please join me in welcoming Professor Mark Carwin.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here in the home area of the Super Bowl champion New England Patriots, but our team is from Buffalo, New York, and all that that implies. Our team is made up of Professor Murad Kurt, PhD student Iraj Kumar Pandey, and Kyle Cunningham, who's with us today, finished his bachelor's degree with us, and is now here in Boston earning his Master of Science in Healthcare Analytics, or Healthcare Systems. The National Football League is the highest grossing annual revenue league in the world with approximately $10 billion in sales, and they have to deal with numerous complex rules which they use to create what they hope is a fair and an appealing schedule for all fans and all franchises. But we believe the schedules are not sufficiently robust to avoid what we will define in a moment as competitive imbalance. Most of you know it's a 17-week season. 1 week is a bye week for each team, 256 games, 16 games per team. And there's a schedule, for example, the regular season 2013 Patriots opponents. There's a 12-year pattern of rotating schedules in that the AFC East in 2013 played the AFC North. These are the intra-conference opponents. And they played the NFC South. Okay? Those rotate, 4 in the NFC, 3 in the AFC. That's 12 patterns. And you also play your standing-based opponents based on the previous year. For example, here 2012, where the Patriots played the first-place Texans and Broncos in addition to the Ravens and the whole AFC North. Don't look at fourth place in AFC East on this slide. Every year, many teams talk to the NFL. Sometimes they complain to the media about the schedule that's come out in April. There are a number of requests. For example, Florida teams don't want to play at 1 o'clock. It's a little bit hot, but many different requests. We believe the most important ones are requests to talk about having to play against more rested opponents, long streaks of away games, and teams don't like to travel a long distance on Thursdays. Okay? So let's see the sources of imbalance due to restoration. If we are coming off a bye and you're coming off a Thursday from the week before, even though that's 4 days of disparity, we've had 10 days of rest, you've had 14, so we don't consider that a disadvantage in our methodology. However, if you're coming off a bye and we're coming from Sunday, you've had an extra 7 days a week. Our methodology eliminates that competitive imbalance. Our third source is you're coming off a bye and we're coming off a Sunday, both going to a Thursday. That's also 7 days extra rest for the team shaded in green, and our methodology eliminates that in our scheduling. The fourth source, we can't eliminate everything. Wouldn't get feasible schedules. We try to minimize the effect of you coming off a Thursday the week before, having an extra few days rest, and we're coming off a Sunday. So you'll see how we do that in a few minutes. Some of the formal complaints, there's many that we've collected from public sources. But John Mara, the Giants CEO and co-owner, they had to play, they don't mind playing on a Thanksgiving, but they had to go all the way from New York to Denver on a short week. Similarly for the 49ers in 2009, going the other direction. So we create a radius of travel from Sunday to Thursday to eliminate those types of complaints. Our biggest goal, though, is based on elimination of bye-week disadvantage. Russ Brandon, the Bills president, talking about the Bills' scheduling disadvantages in 2013, said it's a little bit disappointing that we've had 6 games where teams are coming off a bye or a long week. This is the second time we've been playing the Jets coming off a Thursday night game, and now we're playing them coming off a bye. But maybe over time these things average out. Bills had a bad year against rested opponents. In fact, they've had 2 bad years in a row. 4 games, 2 against divisional components in 2012, 3 divisional components in 2013. Some teams had no such games. But again, maybe over time it evens out. This is one statistic the Bills actually led the league in most games against rested opponents. But it does not equal out over time. If you look at the data we added the 2014 season, 2002 to 2014, the number of teams coming off either a bye, the blue charts, or a Thursday game against more rested opponents. The Bills and Falcons led the league in playing against more rested opponents. And if we can go down to the Patriots, one of our arch rivals, many fewer, about 10 fewer in each category, either the bye week or the Thursday disadvantage, and all the way down to the Bengals or Steelers with only 8 weeks of bye week disadvantage over these 13 years, and another 6 due to Thursday. So it does not equal out over time. There was a study done by Foreman at Florida State University showing the disadvantage of facing extra rested teams. 2010 and 13, there was quite a difference between the winning percentage of all teams against all opponents compared to opponents with extra rest. And on average, it's about a 4-point difference over these years, which would not escape the Las Vegas betting industry. And it has a greater impact on teams that are either weaker or teams that are older in terms of recovering from small injuries or larger ones during the year. The 2014 schedule we looked at in some detail, and we find a number of anomalies. There were 17 teams of the 32 that played against 3 or more games against rested opponents. Now remember, a number of teams never play against any rested opponents. 22 teams came against opponents coming off their bye. Pittsburgh, one of our authors is also from his undergraduate, or his PhD was at Pittsburgh, had 4 sets of 2 back-to-back road games. You only play 8 away games, so you can't have more pairs of this. Tampa Bay started and ended the season with 2 home games, but that means it turned out to only have 4 home games in a 13-week schedule. When you look at the red is the away games, the bye was in green, they were hardly home for 13 weeks. That's not acceptable. One thing we also look at is, for example, Baltimore this past year did not play any divisional game after week 9. So weeks 10 to 16, 7 weeks, they had no divisional game. The NFL scheduling office says late game divisional games, great things happen. We want to be competitive within divisions in the end of the season. Well, everybody plays a divisional opponent now, the last couple of years, in the last game of the season, but here they didn't have any. And Green Bay and Buffalo only had a single game in the last 5 weeks. So again, you might have recognized that because Green Bay was in the hunt. I certainly did. So that these are problems that we like to avoid. Our research goals of our team were to eliminate disadvantages due to bye weeks, minimize disadvantages due to the Thursday game, the 3 extra days of rest, avoid undesirable long patterns of home or away games, particularly away games, but you have to play half at home, half at away, eliminate long travel on short weeks, and offer a better distribution of divisional games. There's other things that we looked at. This last year, there were three games on Thanksgiving. All 6 teams were from the NFC. We incorporated at least 2 teams must be from the AFC for fan interest around the country. The NFL obviously their imposed rules are not publicly available. Some of them are available on the web. Others, you can just look at the last 12 years of schedules and you can figure out the rules, which they've always abided by. We classify these rules, 27 rules, into 7 families. We'll talk about those 7 families in a moment. You can see them. Most of them are the NFL rules. 6 or 7 are the ones we've added to try to alleviate competitive imbalance. Obviously, the distribution of games we started with. The divisional opponent plays home and away, each of their opponents in their division. We play an intra-conference group of 4 teams. 2 are home, 2 are away. Inter-conference, 2 home, 2 and away. And our standing-based opponents, 1 home, 1 away. So that's what's followed in our 1 bye week. Now, our extra constraint for bye week fairness, if we're coming off a bye and playing the Patriots, they must also be coming off a bye. So we eliminate that extra 7 days of rest. The divisional games that did not spread well, for example, for Baltimore, as we mentioned this past season, We've divided the season up into different segments and have at least so many games in each of these different segments. Some of the segments overlap. But that helps to avoid that problem. In far as streaks of home and away games, we allow patterns. In fact, our methodology in the NFL typically have about 5 teams that have a set of 3 road games in a row. And there are many teams that will have a set of pairs, 3 sets of pairs of road games. But we don't allow, in the next bracket, the 4 pairs away, like Pittsburgh faced, or a 3 and 2 twos. That's too many streaks of road games away. And you must play at least once a month at home. If your bye happens to correspond with 3 other road games, wherever it is, you can't be away from home that many times in a row. So we avoid those. There are, of course, other rules that we have to follow. For example, if you're playing a non-divisional opponent, in around 2007, there was an East Coast team that happened to play the AFC West and the NFC West. All 4 of their games were away games at those 4 cities, so they had way too much travel. The NFL eliminated that and has just either 1 game with the Seahawks and 49ers or 1 game with the Raiders and Chargers. You don't have to keep traveling to the West Coast. The Thursday short week is something we impose. So for here, the Patriots can't fly outside of that radius Sunday to Thursday, and the Chargers can't fly outside the left radius. And of course, the same area teams. We know the Jets and Giants share the stadium. They can't play the same time, the same week, unless one's Thursday, one's Sunday. But we also have this idea of coverage of fan base. So for example, for the Bay Area teams, they cannot both be away more than 3 times during the season, or else you have a lack of local interest. There's many other ones. Our approach to solving this problem is a mixed integer linear programming approach. We're looking at an optimization problem. For those who aren't in that field, an optimization problem determines the values of decision variables that satisfy our system constraints while maximizing and minimizing some objective. For us, all of our mathematics is linear, and a number of the variables have to be integer. In order to solve one large problem, the problem's actually too large. It's a very large-scale problem and too hard to solve. So we decompose the regular season scheduling problem into 2 tractable phases. Tractable meaning that it's solvable in a reasonable amount of time. Our 2-phase method in the first phase will determine which teams play who in which week, and where do you have a bye. We generate hundreds and hundreds of schedules like that, and then in phase 2 decide on the home and away games, which will determine the streaks of home and away games, and also determines who's playing on Thursday. So sort of a more larger review. The first phase sets the weeks that we play, who do we play, and when. Same area teams are assigned byes in different weeks, and we don't determine the home and away. So this ends up giving us 300 to 800 schedules for any of the seasons that we've tested. This mathematical model has over 5,000 constraints, 3,500 variables, and generates lots of schedules we put into the second phase. The second phase assigns the Thursday's games and the home and away, the venues for all games. And also has a large number of variables to deal with in solving. And that generates 80 to 250 schedules that are feasible schedules with no bye-week bias. And with our objective in the second phase is to minimize the maximum number of games that teams have this Thursday disadvantage. We call it the league maximum Thursday advantage. So we don't want any team, for example, to have to play more than 2 games against teams coming off a Thursday, and that team had 3 days extra rest. So we also want the minimum number of such teams. So our 2-phase method, the first phase could create a schedule, the partial schedule like this. If you notice, the Patriots and Bills are coming off a bye, playing each other in week 11. The blue ones are divisional games. The top and bottom, Green Bay and the Jets, both had byes in week 10, and they're playing each other in week 11. So this is the result of the first phase. Who's playing when, and we can see the divisional opponents and spread them out. Second phase does the rest. The Thursday games in green, the red ones are the road games, and tries to, again, help us develop a very good schedule. Now we have 80 to 200 schedules available to look at. We do a filtering process which is flexible. For example, here, 2013, we had 584 schedules in the first phase, one of our runs. 146 entered this final phase. And those that had the league maximum Thursday effect, usually down to 2 at most for us, we had 97 schedules to look through. We looked at those with minimize the number of teams that had that Thursday effect. And then we looked at, given that set of schedules, maybe another 30 schedules, how do we pick the schedule where the fewest number of teams had 3 road games in a row? And then after that, how many have the smallest number of 3 sets of pairs in a row? So that's how we try to filter. If you change the order of these criteria, you can get a different result. Our mathematical model, we have major decision variables representing which team plays in what week against what other team. Team I plays Team K in week L, and we have a number of mathematical constraints to take care of these conditions in the first phase. The second phase, the major variables are the decision representing if Team I plays on the road in a given week, week L, and it represents if a team plays on a Thursday in a given week. So we have constraints on the distribution of the home and away, the streaks of home games, constraints on the Thursday short weeks, and constraints on the same area teams. So you can see there's a lot of math involved. Now, we could just look at the last so many years of league schedules, but here what we did was look at all 12 patterns, depending on where you're playing the NFC East, the NFC West, the AFC West, North. So there's actually 12 patterns. We simulated 100 standings. So here in 2008, just again, what you can see that you have different patterns of who you're playing. But for example, in one of these simulations, the AFC East was won by the Buffalo Bills. Of course, Tom Brady was 51 years old at the time, and Bill Belichick, with a recognizing age, was coaching from the press box. But we did win. So we look at, can we come up with good schedules for all 1,200 of these? And the answer is yes. The schedules we come up with are very much like the ones I'm going to show you. Okay. Comparing the NFL schedules with the two-phase method, our approach, if you compare post-bye week opponents, the NFL in 2012, one team had to play 3 different times against teams coming off their bye. 2013 and 14, 2 teams played 3, 5 teams played 2. We had no such teams because we eliminate the bye week disadvantage. When one team played 3 teams coming off their bye, there are also lots of teams that had 2 coming off their bye, as you'll see in the next slide. Comparing the post-Thursday opponent effects, the NFL had 8 teams playing had 8 teams with at least 2 Thursday disadvantages. The maximum was 3 Thursday disadvantages. The blue bars are our method. We had 4 teams in 2012 with 2 Thursday disadvantages, and 2 is our maximum. So the NFL had 8, 7, and 10 in these years, with 3, 3, and 2 is the maximum. We had 4, 5, and 6 with a maximum of 2. Comparing on the left, combining Thursday and bye week effects, the NFL in 2012 had at least 17 teams that had at least 2 disadvantages. We had 4 teams with 2, and they had 5 as their maximum. Again, the Bills had 5, played against 5 rested opponents. So you can see our bars are a lot shorter, and the NFL has quite a few teams with at least 2 disadvantages, with maximums of some team had 5, 5, and 4. In comparing the road streaks of games, that's a little different. In terms of long-term averages of all our running, the number of teams that had 3 road games in a row is quite similar. We sometimes have more teams with 3 pairs of road games where we have to give that up in order to satisfy everything else we're doing. 2014, in the first 4 weeks and the last 5 weeks of the season, this just shows we do play more divisional games, but we also avoid those streaks of not playing any in a long period. So we do tend to play more at the beginning and at the end. We have a diverse schedule pool. Again, we end up with 30 or 40 or actually like 80 schedules we can look at. Depending on how we filter them, we get a different result. For 2015, the schedule isn't out yet. This happens to be one of our best years. If you look at the third schedule, we have one team that has 3 Thursday disadvantages. No team has 3 road games in a row. Only 4 teams have 3 pairs of road games, and there's 21 teams with no Thursday disadvantage. And remember, in our schedule, nobody has a bye week disadvantage. If we prefer to look at only league maximum Thursday disadvantage of only 2 days, then we have to give something up. We'll have 4 teams with 2, and we'll have 2 or 3 teams with 3 road games, which is, again, well under the average of 5. So one can look at and filter the schedules differently. These are the number of schedules that we generate and to be looked at, with the green bar at the bottom, the final number we can filter. And we're able to solve a given schedule for a given season in just 20 minutes. So in wrapping up, we believe in a modest amount of time, our approach has produced schedules with no disadvantage due to bye weeks, a minimum disadvantage due to short weeks, few teams with 3 road games in a row, and a much more appealing distribution of divisional games. Now, in all honesty, what did we not address? We did not have stadium availability. We did not have broadcasting requirements. However, our models are very flexible. We can include those. And we also can generate lots more schedules. We just did that last night. If we allow 1 bye week disadvantage, our final pool of schedules goes up by about 30% in order to be filtered for these other interests of the NFL. So that's what we've done. We have the analytics to define a problem, and I call it actionable analytics. We then did something about it to believe that we can influence, at least considering other constraints that might make the fan base and the franchises a little happier in terms of the appeal of the NFL schedule. If there's any questions, happy to have them.
The mic's coming.
Yeah, the mic's coming so everyone can hear the questions.
So I know from the NFL's league office standpoint, they're trying to maximize ratings when they create the schedule. So is there a way to reconcile the competitive balances with the rating balances?
Yes, you know, that last filtering process, there's 2 ways. In the final filtering process, where we have, say, approximately 80 schedules that satisfy all our concern about alleviating at least the big bye week disadvantage, one can add to that filter the, basically you're looking about the broadcasting scheduling, right? Right. You can also, in our methodology, add constraints. You saw that mathematical model that said at least one of these types of games must be played this week, this week, this week, this week, et cetera. Now, I've looked at some of the schedules we've created, and by spreading out the divisional games, you almost automatically get that. Now, you have to play non-divisional opponents. So Dallas might have to play the Patriots sometime. For us, those tend to be in the middle of the season. And so it shouldn't be hard to either filter it and or add constraints as you go. But you do have to sacrifice something to constrain everything. Where's our...
You may have included this in the families of the variables that you had listed. I wasn't sure if you got this.
Sure.
But geographically isolated teams within each division. So there's an assumption that within each division there's a relatively small area to travel. But teams like Seattle, and I don't know why I'm giving them a break, but teams like Seattle are geographically isolated in that they have to travel, even within their own division, farther than, let's say, the Patriots. There's also teams that are geographically isolated as well as have to change time zones. For example, the Cowboys have to go to the East Coast and change time zones. Was that built in? Or?
Okay, what was built in is that on a Thursday, neither of those needs to, from Sunday to Thursday, neither one will fly more than 3.5 hours. All of our schedules don't allow them to fly Sunday to Thursday, either direction.
What's the runtime on this process?
Yeah, this was this only took for a given schedule, because we simulated 1,200 standings. A given schedule was 20 minutes on a personal computer, a good personal computer, but it did not need many cores and it wasn't a large scale.
So from beginning to final schedule?
Yep. Phase 1, phase 2, the filtering, it was 20 minutes. Now again, for us, because we did 1,200 simulations of all kinds of standings, it took a long time. It was 20 minutes per schedule.
So this is our last question.
So ratings and competitive imbalance aside, how do you think that if adopted, a schedule like this could prevent player injuries and promote better player safety?
No, that's very good because if we're coming off a bye, you are, we both had a certain amount of rest. We're trying to minimize the disadvantage of playing with a team with more rest, which would be more physically ready. Again, I guess it goes in both directions. If you alleviate the competitive imbalance, then you both had basically the same amount of time to heal. We know we have lots of, that's why it's a 16-week season, not 162 like baseball. And I think that that's a good point we hadn't thought of, honestly, that sort of equalizing the rest, nobody will be playing. We've also looked at, if you're coming off a bye, we could consider, again, basically equal amount of rest. Now, unfortunately, we do have Thursday games. Players complain a lot about playing on Thursday. But if the NFL is going to have Thursday games, each team has got a Thursday game, and that's a short rest. So that our method can't change unless you eliminate Thursday games. Of course, that reminds me, one of the rules is the Super Bowl champions play on the initial Thursday. I mean, all the rules we could come up with are in the model.
Okay, well, that concludes our question and answer period. Please join me in thanking Professor Mark Carwin.
Thank you very much. Thank you.